Genghis Khan, born Temüjin, was the founder, and first great Khan, emperor, of the Mongol Empire, which became the largest contiguous empire in history after his death. He came to power by uniting many of the nomadic tribes of the Mongol steppe, and being proclaimed the universal ruler of the Mongols, or Genghis Khan. With the tribes of Northeast Asia largely under his control, he set in motion the Mongol invasions, which ultimately witnessed the conquest of much of Eurasia, and incursions by Mongol raiding parties as far west as Legnica in western Poland, and as far south as Gaza. He launched campaigns against the Qara Khitai, Khwarezmia, the Western Xia and Jin dynasty during his life, and his generals raided into medieval Georgia, Circassia, the Kievan Rus, and Volga Bulgaria. His exceptional military successes made Genghis Khan one of the most important conquerors of all time, and by the end of the Great Khan's life, the Mongol Empire occupied a substantial portion of Central Asia, and present-day China. Genghis Khan, and his story of conquest have a fearsome reputation in local histories. Medieval chroniclers, and modern historians describe Genghis Khan's conquests as resulting in such destruction that they led to drastic population declines in some regions. Estimates of the number of people who died through war, disease, and famine as a consequence of Genghis Khan's military campaigns range from about 4 million in the most conservative estimates to up to 60 million in the most sweeping historical accounts. On the other hand, Genghis Khan has also been portrayed positively by authors ranging from medieval and Renaissance scientists in Europe to modern historians for the spread of technological and artistic ideas under Mongol influence. Beyond his military successes, Genghis Khan's civil achievements included the establishment of Mongol law, and the adoption of the Uyghur script as a writing system across his vast territories. He also practiced meritocracy and religious tolerance. Present-day Mongolians regard him as the founding father of Mongolia for unifying the nomadic tribes of Northeast Asia. By bringing the Silk Road under one cohesive political environment, he also considerably eased communication and trade between Northeast Asia, Muslim Southwest Asia, and Christian Europe, boosting global commerce and expanding the cultural horizons of all the Eurasian civilizations of the day. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Genghis Khan's birth name Temüjin came from the Tatar chief Temüjin whom his father had just captured. The name Temüjin is also equated with the Turco-Mongol Temüjin, blacksmith, and there existed a tradition that viewed Genghis Khan as a smith, according to Paul Pelliot, which, though unfounded, was well established by the middle of the 13th century. Genghis Khan is an honorary title meaning universal ruler that represents an aggrandization of the pre-existing title of Khan that is used to denote a clan chief in Mongolian. The appellation of Genghis to the term is thought to derive from the Turkic word Tengiz, meaning sea, making the honorary title literally oceanic ruler, but understood more broadly as a metaphor for the universality or totality of Temüjin's rule from a Mongol perspective. When Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty in 1271, he had his grandfather Genghis Khan placed in official records, and accorded him the temple name Taizu, and the posthumous name Emperor Shungwu. Genghis Khan is thus also referred to as Yuan Taizu, Emperor Taizu of Yuan, in Chinese historiography. Kublai Khan later expanded Genghis Khan's title to Emperor Faishan Shiyun Shungwu. Temüjin was born the first son of Hoalun, second wife of his father Yeshogay, who was the chief of the Burjagan clan in the nomadic Kamag-Mongol Confederation, nephew to Ambagai, and Hachala Khan, and an ally of Togril of the Karat tribe. Temüjin was related on his father's side to Kabul Khan, Ambagai, and Hachala Khan, who had headed the Kamag-Mongol Confederation, and were descendants of Badankar Munkag, c. 900, while his mother Hoalun was from the old Qanat sublineage of the Kongira tribe. Temüjin's noble background made it easier for him, later in life, to solicit help from, and eventually consolidate the other Mongol tribes. There is considerable uncertainty surrounding both the date and location of Temüjin's birth, with historical accounts assigning dates of birth ranging from 1155 to 1182, and a wide variety of possible birth locations. The Arab historian Rashid al-Din asserted that Temüjin was born in 1155, while the history of Yuan records his year of birth as 1162. And Tibetan sources implausibly present 1182 as the correct date. Modern historical studies have largely attested the 1162 date presented by the Chinese history as the most realistic, given the significant problems associated with how either the 1155 or 1182 dates would reflect on other events in Temüjin's timeline. Accepting a birth in 1155, for instance, would render Temüjin a father at the age of 30, and would imply that he personally commanded the expedition against the Tanks at the age of 72. The secret history of the Mongols relates that Temüjin was an infant during the attack by the Merkits, when a birth date of 1155 would have made him 18 years old. The 1162 date has meanwhile been attested by various sources, including a 1992 study of the Mongol calendar commissioned by UNESCO that suggested the specific date of May 1, 1162. The location of Temüjin's birth is largely shrouded in mystery, with a wide range of locations proposed, many in the vicinity of the mountain Burkhan Khaldun. One such location is Delyan Boldog, which lies near the rivers Anon and Kurlan. Temüjin grew up with three brothers, Kesar, Hakayun, and Temüj, one sister, Temülan, and two half-brothers, Bihar and Belgatay. As was common to nomads in Mongolia, Temüjin's early life was marked by difficulties. At age 9, his father arranged a marriage for him, and delivered him to the family of his future wife Bord of the tribe Kongirat. Temüjin was to live there serving the head of the household Dysetsan until the marriageable age of 12. While heading home, his father ran into the neighboring Tatars, who had long been Mongol enemies, and they offered his father food under the guise of hospitality, but instead poisoned him. Upon learning this, Temüjin returned home to claim his father's position as chief, but the tribe refused him, and abandoned the family, leaving it without protection. For the next several years, the family lived in poverty, surviving mostly on wild fruits, ox carcasses, marmots, and other small game killed by Temüjin and his brothers. During this time, Temüjin's mother, Hoelun, taught him about Mongol politics, including the lack of unity between the different clans, and the need for arranged marriages to solidify temporary alliances, and strong alliances to ultimately ensure the stability of Mongolia. Indeed, he was later successful, in part, because of his mother's role as a warrior in battle. Over time, Temüjin's older half-brother Bihar began to exercise power as the eldest male in the family, creating tension in the family that boiled over during one hunting excursion by the men of the family, and resulted in the death of Bihar at the hands of Temüjin and his brother Kesar. Later, in a raid around 1177, Temüjin was captured by his father's former allies, the Taisho, enslaved, and, reportedly humiliated by being shacked in a keg, a form of portable stocks. With the help of a sympathetic guard, he escaped from the yurt, at night by hiding in a river crevice. The escape earned Temüjin a reputation. Soon, Jelm and Bochu joined forces with him, and they, and the guard's son Shilan eventually became generals of Genghis Khan. As was common for powerful Mongol men, Temüjin had many wives and concubines. These women were often queens or princesses that were taken captive from the territories he conquered or gifted to him by allies, vassals, or other tribal acquaintances. His principal or most famous wives and concubines included Bort, Yeshugan, Yesui, Kulan Khatun, Muga Khatun, Jurbiasu, and Ibaka Beki. He gave several of his high-status wives their own ordos or camps to live in and manage. Each camp also contained junior wives, concubines, and children. It was the job of the Kshig, Mongol Imperial Guard, to protect the yurts of Temüjin's wives. The guards had to pay particular attention to the individual yurt and camp in which Temüjin slept, which could change every night as he visited different wives. When he set out on his military conquests, he usually took one wife with him, and left the rest of his wives and concubines to manage the empire in his absence. In the early 12th century, the Central Asian plateau north of China was divided into several prominent tribal confederations, including Naimans, Merkits, Tatars, Khmer Mongols, and Kharites, that were often unfriendly towards each other, as evidenced by random raids, revenge attacks, and plundering. Temüjin began his ascent to power by offering himself as an ally, or, according to other sources, a vassal, to his father's Anda, sworn brother or blood brother, Togrul, who was Khan of the Kharites. This relationship was first reinforced when Bort was kidnapped by Merkits in around 1184. To win her back, Temüjin called on the support of Togrul, who offered 20,000 of his carried warriors, and suggested that Temüjin involve his childhood friend Jamika, who was Khan of his own tribe, the Jadaran. As Jamika and Temüjin drifted apart in their friendship, each began consolidating power, and they became rivals. Jamika supported the traditional Mongolian aristocracy, while Temüjin followed a meritocratic method, and attracted a broader range and lower class of followers. Following his earlier defeat of the Merkits, and a proclamation by the shaman Kokachu that the eternal blue sky had set aside the world for Temüjin, Temüjin began rising to power. In 1186, Temüjin was elected Khan of the Mongols. Threatened by this rise, Genghis attacked Temüjin in 1187 with an army of 30,000 troops. Temüjin gathered his followers to defend against the attack, but was decisively beaten in the Battle of Dilan Balzit. However, Genghis horrified and alienated potential followers by boiling 70 young male captives alive in cauldrons. Togrul, as Temüjin's patron, was exiled to the Qara Khitai. The life of Temüjin for the next 10 years is unclear, as historical records are mostly silent on that period. Around the year 1197, the Jin initiated an attack against their former vassal, the Tatars, with help from the Khwarezmians and Mongols. Temüjin commanded part of this attack, and after victory, he and Togrul were restored by the Jin to positions of power. The Jin bestowed Togrul with the honorable title of Ong Khan, and Temüjin with a lesser title of Jiaotkuri. Around 1200, the main rivals of the Mongol Confederation, traditionally the Mongols, were the Naimans to the west, the Merkits to the north, the Tanks to the south, and the Jin to the east. In his rule, and his conquest of rival tribes, Temüjin broke with Mongol tradition in a few crucial ways. He delegated authority based on merit and loyalty, rather than family ties. As an incentive for absolute obedience, and the Yasa code of law, Temüjin promised civilians and soldiers wealth from future war spoils. When he defeated rival tribes, he did not drive away their soldiers and abandon their civilians. Instead, he took the conquered tribe under his protection and integrated its members into his own tribe. He would even have his mother adopt orphans from the conquered tribe, bringing them into his family. These political innovations inspired great loyalty among the conquered people, making Temüjin stronger with each victory. Sengam, son of Togrul, Wang Khan, envied Temüjin's growing power and affinity with his father. He allegedly planned to assassinate Temüjin. Although Togrul was allegedly saved on multiple occasions by Temüjin, he gave in to his son, and became uncooperative with Temüjin. Temüjin learned of Sengam's intentions, and eventually defeated him and his loyalists. One of the later ruptures between Temüjin and Togrul was Togrul's refusal to give his daughter in marriage to Joshi, Temüjin's first son. This was disrespectful in Mongolian culture, and led to a war. Togrul allied with Genghis, who already opposed Temüjin's forces. However, the dispute between Togrul and Genghis, plus the desertion of a number of their allies to Temüjin, led to Togrul's defeat. Genghis escaped during the conflict. This defeat was a catalyst for the fall and eventual dissolution of the Qara tribe. After conquering his way steadily through the Alki Tatars, Khwarezmians, and Uhaz Merkits, and acquiring at least one wife each time, Temüjin turned to the next threat on the steppe, the Turkic Naimans under the leadership of Tayang Khan, with whom Genghis and his followers took refuge. The Naimans did not surrender, although enough sectors again voluntarily sided with Temüjin. In 1201, a Khitai elected Genghis as Gur Khan, universal ruler, a title used by the rulers of the Qara Khitai. Genghis' assumption of this title was the final breach with Temüjin, and Genghis formed a coalition of tribes to oppose him. Before the conflict, several generals abandoned Genghis, including Subutai, Jelm's well-known younger brother. After several battles, Genghis was captured in 1205. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Temüjin again offered his friendship to Genghis. Temüjin had killed the men who betrayed Genghis, stating that he did not want disloyal men in his army. Genghis refused the offer, saying that there can only be one sun in the sky, and he asked for a noble death. The custom was to die without spilling blood, specifically by having one's back broken. According to one account, Genghis was executed by suffocation. The part of the Merkit clan that sided with the Naimans were defeated by Subutai, who was by then a member of Temüjin's personal guard, and later became one of Temüjin's most successful commanders. The Naimans' defeat left Temüjin as the sole ruler of the Mongol steppe. All the prominent confederations fell or united under his Mongol confederation. Accounts of Temüjin's life are marked by claims of a series of betrayals and conspiracies. These include rifts with his early allies such as Genghis, who also wanted to be a ruler of Mongol tribes, and Wang Khan, his and his father's ally, his son Joshi, and problems with the most important shaman, who allegedly tried to drive a wedge between him and his loyal brother Kashar. His military strategies showed a deep interest in gathering intelligence and understanding the motivations of his rivals, exemplified by his extensive spy network and YAM route systems. He seemed to be a quick student, adopting new technologies and ideas that he encountered, such as siege warfare from the Chinese. He was also ruthless, demonstrated by his tactic of measuring against the linchpin, used against the tribes led by Jamaica. As a result, by 1206, Temüjin had managed to unite or subdue the Merkits, Naimans, Mongols, Karites, Tatars, Uyghurs, and other disparate smaller tribes under his rule. This was a monumental feat. It resulted in peace between previously warring tribes, and a single political and military force. The union became known as the Mongols. At Qara Khitai, a council of Mongol chiefs, Temüjin was acknowledged as Khan of the consolidated tribes, and took the new title Genghis Khan. The title Kagan was conferred posthumously by his son and successor Ogedei, who took the title for himself, as he was also to be posthumously declared the founder of the Yuan dynasty. According to the secret history of the Mongols, the chieftains of the conquered tribes pledged to Genghis Khan by proclaiming, "We will make you Khan, you shall ride at our head, against our foes. We will throw ourselves like lightning on your enemies. We will bring you their finest women and girls, their rich tents like palaces." During the 1206 political rise of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire and its allies shared their western borders with the Tangut Western Xia dynasty. To the east and south of the Western Xia dynasty was the militarily superior Jin dynasty, founded by the Manchurian Jurchens, who ruled northern China as well as being the traditional overlords of the Mongolian tribes for centuries. Though militarily inferior to the neighboring Jin, the Western Xia still exerted a significant influence upon the adjacent northern steppes. Following the death of the Karites leader Khan to Temüjin's emerging Mongol Empire in 1203, Kariite leader Nalkasengam led a small band of followers into Western Xia before later being expelled from Western Xia territory. Using his rival Nalkasengam's temporary refuge in Western Xia as a pretext, Temüjin launched a raid against the state in 1205 in the Edson region. The next year, in 1206, Temüjin was formally proclaimed Genghis Khan, ruler of all the Mongols, marking the official start of the Mongol Empire, and the same year Emperor Huansong of the Western Xia was deposed by Lian Quan in a coup d'état. In 1207, Genghis led another raid into Western Xia, invading the Ordos region, and sacking Wuhai, the main garrison along the Yellow River, before withdrawing in 1208. Genghis then began preparing for a full-scale invasion, organizing his people, army, and state to first prepare for war. By invading Western Xia, Genghis Khan would gain a tribute-paying vassal, and also would take control of caravan routes along the Silk Road, and provide the Mongols with valuable revenue. Furthermore, from Western Xia he could launch raids into the even more wealthy Jin dynasty. He correctly believed that the more powerful young ruler of the Jin dynasty would not come to the aid of the Western Xia. When the Tanks requested help from the Jin dynasty, they were refused. Despite initial difficulties in capturing Western Xia cities, Genghis Khan managed to force Emperor Renzong to submit to vassal status. In 1211, after the conquest of Western Xia, Genghis Khan planned again to conquer the Jin dynasty. Luckily for the Mongols, Wanyan Jujin, the field commander of the Jin army, made several tactical mistakes, including avoiding attacking the Mongols at the first opportunity using his overwhelming numerical superiority, and instead initially fortifying behind the Great Wall. At the subsequent Battle of Yehuling, which the Jin commander later committed to in the hope of using the mountainous terrain to his advantage against the Mongols, the general's emissary Mein Gan defected to the Mongol side, and instead handed over intelligence on the movements of the Jin army, which was subsequently outmaneuvered, resulting in hundreds of thousands of Jin casualties. So many, in fact, that decades later, when the Taoist sage Chu Shuji was passing through this pass to meet Genghis Khan, he was stunned to still see the bones of so many people scattered in the pass. On his way back, he camped close to this pass for 3 days, and prayed for the departed souls. In 1215, Genghis besieged the Jin capital of Thongdu, modern-day Beijing. According to Ivar Listener, the inhabitants resorted to firing gold and silver cannon shot on the Mongols with their muzzle-loading cannons when their supply of metal for ammunition ran out. The city was captured and sacked. This forced the Jin ruler, Emperor Xuanzong, to move his capital south to Kaifeng, abandoning the northern half of his empire to the Mongols. Between 1232 and 1233, Kafeng fell to the Mongols under the reign of Genghis's third son, and successor, Ogedei Khan. The Jin dynasty collapsed in 1234, after the siege of Keijo. Kuchlug, the deposed Khan of the name and confederation that Genghis Khan defeated, and folded into his Mongol Empire, fled west, and usurped the Khanate of Qara Khitai, also known as the Western Liao, as it was originally established as remnants of the Liao dynasty. Genghis Khan decided to conquer the Qara Khitai, and defeat Kuchlug, possibly to take him out of power. By this time the Mongol army was exhausted from 10 years of continuous campaigning in China against the Western Xia and Jin dynasty. Therefore, Genghis sent only two Temüjin, 20,000 soldiers, against Kuchlug, under his younger general, Jebei, known as the Arrow. With such a small force, the invading Mongols were forced to change strategies, and resort to inciting internal revolt among Kuchlug's supporters, leaving the Qara Khitai more vulnerable to Mongol conquest. As a result, Kuchlug's army was defeated west of Kashgar. Kuchlug fled again, but was soon hunted down by Jebei's army, and executed. By 1218, as a result of the defeat of Qara Khitai, the Mongol Empire, and its control extended as far west as Lake Balkhash, which bordered Khwarezmia, a Muslim state that reached the Caspian Sea to the west, and Persian Gulf, and the Arabian Sea to the south. In the early 13th century, the Khwarezmian dynasty was governed by Shah al-Adin Muhammad. Genghis Khan saw the potential advantage in Khwarezmia as a commercial trading partner using the Silk Road, and he initially sent a 500-man caravan to establish official trade ties with the empire. Genghis Khan, and his family, and commanders invested in the caravan gold, silver, silk, various kinds of textiles, and fabrics, and pelts to trade with the Muslim traders in the Khwarezmian lands. However, Inalk, the governor of the Khwarezmian city of Achar, attacked the caravan, claiming that the caravan contained spies, and therefore was a conspiracy against Khwarezmia. The situation became further complicated because the governor later refused to make repayments for the looting of the caravans, and hand over the perpetrators. Genghis Khan then sent a second group of 3 ambassadors, 2 Mongols, and a Muslim, to meet the Shah himself, instead of the governor Inalk. The Shah had all the men shaved, and the Muslim beheaded, and sent his head back with the 2 remaining ambassadors. Outraged, Genghis Khan planned one of his largest invasion campaigns by organizing together around 100,000 soldiers, 10 Temüjins, his most capable generals, and some of his sons. He left a commander, and number of troops in China, designated his successors to be his family members, and likely appointed Ogedei to be his immediate successor, and then went out to Khwarezmia. The Mongol army under Genghis Khan, generals, and his sons crossed the Tian Shan mountains by entering the area controlled by the Khwarezmian Empire. After compiling intelligence from many sources, Genghis Khan carefully prepared his army, which was divided into 3 groups. His son Joshi led the 1st division into the northeast of Khwarezmia. The 2nd division under Jebei marched secretly to the southeast part of Khwarezmia to form, with the 1st division, a pincer attack on Samarkand. The 3rd division under Genghis Khan, and Tolui marched to the northwest, and attacked Khwarezmia from that direction. The Shah's army was split by diverse internecine feuds, and by the Shah's decision to divide his army into small groups concentrated in various cities. This fragmentation was decisive in Khwarezmia's defeats, as it allowed the Mongols, although exhausted from the long journey, to immediately set about defeating small fractions of the Khwarezmian forces instead of facing a unified defense. The Mongol army quickly seized the town of Achar, relying on superior strategy and tactics. Genghis Khan ordered the wholesale massacre of many of the civilians, enslaved the rest of the population, and executed Inalk by pouring molten silver into his ears and eyes, as retribution for his actions. Next, Genghis Khan besieged the city of Bukhara. Bukhara was not heavily fortified, with just a moat, and a single wall, and the citadel typical of Khwarezmian cities. The city leaders opened the gates to the Mongols, though a unit of Turkish defenders held the city's citadel for another 12 days. The survivors from the citadel were executed, artisans and craftsmen were sent back to Mongolia, young men who had not fought were drafted into the Mongolian army, and the rest of the population was sent into slavery. After the surrender of Bukhara, Genghis Khan also took the unprecedented step of personally entering the city, after which he had the city's aristocrats and elites brought to the mosque, where, through interpreters, he lectured them on their misdeeds, saying, "If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." With the capture of Bukhara, The way was clear for the Mongols to advance on the capital of Samarkand, which possessed significantly better fortifications, and a larger garrison compared to Bukhara. To overcome the city, the Mongols engaged in intensive psychological warfare, including the use of captured Khwarezmian prisoners as body shields. After several days, only a few remaining soldiers, loyal supporters of the Shah, held out in the citadel. After the fortress fell, Genghis executed every soldier that had taken arms against him. According to the Persian historian Atamalik Juvayni, the people of Samarkand were then ordered to evacuate, and assemble in a plain outside the city, where they were killed, and pyramids of severed heads raised as a symbol of victory. Similarly, Juvayni wrote that in the city Termez, to the south of Samarkand, all the people, both men and women, were driven out onto the plain, and divided in accordance with their usual custom, then they were all slain. Juvayni's account of mass killings at these sites is not corroborated by modern archaeology. Instead of killing local populations, the Mongols tended to enslave the conquered, and either send them to Mongolia to act as menial labor or retain them for use in the war effort. The effect was still mass depopulation. The piling of a pyramid of severed heads happened not at Samarkand but at Nishapur, where Genghis Khan's son-in-law Adokshar was killed by an arrow shot from the city walls after the residents revolted. The Khan then allowed his widowed daughter, who was pregnant at the time, to decide the fate of the city, and she decreed that the entire population be killed. She also supposedly ordered that every dog, cat, and any other animals in the city be slaughtered, so that no living thing would survive the murder of her husband. The sentence was duly carried out by the Khan's youngest son Tolui. According to widely circulated but unverified stories, the severed heads were then erected in separate piles for the men, women, and children. Near to the end of the battle for Samarkand, the Shah fled rather than surrender. Genghis Khan subsequently ordered two of his generals, Subutai and Jebei, to destroy the remnants of the Khwarezmian Empire, giving them 20,000 men, and 2 years to do this. The Shah died under mysterious circumstances on a small island in the Caspian Sea that he had retreated to with his remaining loyal forces. Meanwhile, the wealthy trading city of Urgench was still in the hands of Khwarezmian forces. The assault on Urgench proved to be the most difficult battle of the Mongol invasion, and the city fell only after the defenders put up a stout defense, fighting block for block. Mongolian casualties were higher than normal, due to the unaccustomed difficulty of adapting Mongolian tactics to city fighting. As usual, the artisans were sent back to Mongolia, young women and children were given to the Mongol soldiers as slaves, and the rest of the population was massacred. The Persian scholar Juvayni states that 50,000 Mongol soldiers were given the task of executing 24 Urgench citizens each, which would mean that 1.2 million people were killed. These numbers are considered logistically implausible by modern scholars, but the sacking of Urgench was no doubt a bloody affair. After the defeat of the Khwarezmian Empire in 1220, Genghis Khan gathered his forces in Persia and Armenia to return to the Mongolian steppes. Under the suggestion of Subutai, the Mongol army was split into two forces. Genghis Khan led the main army on a raid through Afghanistan and northern India towards Mongolia, while another 20,000, Tutuman, contingent marched through the Caucasus and into Russia under generals Jebei and Subutai. They pushed deep into Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Mongols defeated the Kingdom of Georgia, sacked the Genoese trade fortress of Kaffa in Crimea, and overwintered near the Black Sea. Heading home, Subutai's forces attacked the allied forces of the Cuman Kipchaks, and the poorly coordinated 80,000 Kievan Rus troops led by Mstislav the Bold of Halych, and Mstislav III of Kiev, who went out to stop the Mongols' actions in the area. Subutai sent emissaries to the Slavic princes calling for a separate peace, but the emissaries were executed. At the Battle of Kalka River in 1223, Subutai's forces defeated the larger Kievan force. They may have been defeated by the neighboring Volga Bulgars at the Battle of Samarkand. There is no historical record except a short account by the Arab historian Ibn al-Athir, writing in Mosul some 1,800 kilometers, 1,100 miles, away from the event. Various historical secondary sources, Morgan, Chambers, Hersey, state that the Mongols actually defeated the Bulgars, Chambers even going so far as to say that the Bulgars had made up stories to tell the recently crushed Russians that they had beaten the Mongols and driven them from their territory. The Russian princes then sued for peace. Subutai agreed but was in no mood to pardon the princes. Not only had the Rus put up strong resistance, but also Jebei, with whom Subutai had campaigned for years, had been killed just prior to the Battle of Kalka River. As was customary in Mongol society for nobility, the Russian princes were given a bloodless death. Subutai had a large wooden platform constructed on which he ate his meals along with his other generals. 6 Russian princes, including Mstislav III of Kiev, were put onto this platform and crushed to death. The Mongols learned from captives of the abundant green pastures beyond the Bulgar territory, allowing for the planning for conquest of Hungary and Europe. Genghis Khan recalled Subutai back to Mongolia soon afterwards. The famous cavalry expedition led by Subutai and Jebei, in which they encircled the entire Caspian Sea defeating all armies in their path, remains unparalleled to this day, and word of the Mongol triumphs began to trickle to other nations, particularly in Europe. These 2 campaigns are generally regarded as reconnaissance campaigns that tried to get the feel of the political and cultural elements of the regions. In 1225 both divisions returned to Mongolia. These invasions added Transoxiana and Persia to an already formidable empire while destroying any resistance along the way. Later under Genghis Khan's grandson Batu and the Golden Horde, the Mongols returned to conquer Volga Bulgaria and Kievan Rus in 1237, concluding the campaign in 1240. The vassal emperor of the Tanks, Western Xia, had earlier refused to take part in the Mongol war against the Khamid Empire. Western Xia and the defeated Jin dynasty formed a coalition to resist the Mongols, counting on the campaign against the Khwarezmians to preclude the Mongols from responding effectively. In 1226, immediately after returning from the west, Genghis Khan began a retaliatory attack on the Tanks. His armies quickly took Haisui, Ganzhou, and Suzhou, not the Suzhou in Jiangsu province, and in the autumn he took Ziliangfu. One of the Tangut generals challenged the Mongols to a battle near Halon Mountains but was defeated. In November, Genghis laid siege to the Tangut city Lingzhou, and crossed the Yellow River, defeating the Tangut relief army. According to legend, it was here that Genghis Khan reportedly saw a line of 5 stars arranged in the sky, and interpreted it as an omen of his victory. In 1227, Genghis Khan's army attacked and destroyed the Tangut capital of Ningxia, and continued to advance, seizing Lintaofu, Xining province, Xindufu, and Dishun province in quick succession in the spring. At Dishun, the Tangut general Ma Jianlong put up a fierce resistance for several days, and personally led charges against the invaders outside the city gate. Ma Jianlong later died from wounds received from arrows in battle. Genghis Khan, after conquering Dishun, went to Liupanshan, Guangshui County, Gansu province, to escape the severe summer. The new Tangut emperor quickly surrendered to the Mongols, and the rest of the Tanks officially surrendered soon after. Not happy with their betrayal and resistance, Genghis Khan ordered the entire imperial family to be executed, effectively ending the Tangut royal lineage. According to the official history of Yuan commissioned during China's Ming dynasty, Genghis Khan died during his final campaign against the Western Xia, falling ill on August 18, 1227, and passing away on August 25, 1227. The exact cause of his death remains a mystery, and is variously attributed to illness, being killed in action or from wounds sustained in hunting or battle. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Genghis Khan fell from his horse while hunting, and died because of the injury. The Galician Volhynian Chronicle alleges he was killed by the Western Xia in battle, while Marco Polo wrote that he died after the infection of an arrow wound he received during his final campaign. Later Mongol chronicles connect Genghis's death with a Western Xia princess taken as war booty. One chronicle from the early 17th century even relates the legend that the princess hid a small dagger, and stabbed or castrated him. All of these legends were invented well after Genghis Khan's death, however. In contrast, a 2021 study found that the great leader likely died from bubonic plague, after investigating reports of the clinical signs exhibited by both the Khan and his army, which in turn matched the symptoms associated with the strain of plague present in Western Xia at that time. Years before his death, Genghis Khan asked to be buried without markings, according to the customs of his tribe. After he died, his body was returned to Mongolia, and presumably to his birthplace in Hinti-Amag, where many assume he is buried somewhere close to the Anon River, and the Burkhan Khaldun mountain, part of the Hinti mountain range. According to legend, the funeral escort killed anyone and anything across their path to conceal where he was finally buried. The Genghis Khan Mausoleum, constructed many years after his death, is his memorial, but not his burial site. Before Genghis Khan died, he assigned Ogedei Khan as his successor. Genghis Khan left behind an army of more than 129,000 men, 28,000 were given to his various brothers and his sons. Tolui, his youngest son, inherited more than 100,000 men. This force contained the bulk of the elite Mongolian cavalry. By tradition, the youngest son inherits his father's property. Joshi, Chagatai, Ogedei Khan, and Kulan's son Jeljian received armies of 4,000 men each. His mother, and the descendants of his 3 brothers received 3,000 men each. The title of Great Khan passed to Ogedei, the 3rd son of Genghis Khan, making him the 2nd Great Khan, Kievan, of the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan's eldest son, Joshi, died in 1226, during his father's lifetime. Chagatai, Genghis Khan's 2nd son, was meanwhile passed over, according to the secret history of the Mongols, over a road just before the invasion of the Khwarezmia Empire, in which Chagatai declared before his father and brothers that he would never accept Joshi as Genghis Khan's successor due to questions about his elder brother's parentage. In response to this tension, and possibly for other reasons, Ogedei was appointed as successor. Later, his grandson split his empire into khanates. His descendants extended the Mongol Empire across most of Eurasia by conquering or creating vassal states in all of modern-day China, Korea, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and substantial portions of Eastern Europe, and Southwest Asia. Many of these invasions repeated the earlier large-scale slaughters of local populations. The Mongol Empire was governed by a civilian and military code, called the Yasa, created by Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire did not emphasize the importance of ethnicity and race in the administrative realm, instead adopting an approach grounded in meritocracy. The Mongol Empire was one of the most ethnically and culturally diverse empires in history, as befitted its size. Many of the empire's nomadic inhabitants considered themselves Mongols in military and civilian life, including the Mongol people, Turkic peoples, and others. There were Khans of various non-Mongolian ethnicities such as Muhammad Khan. There were tax exemptions for religious figures, and, to some extent, teachers and doctors. The Mongol Empire practiced religious tolerance because Mongol tradition had long held that religion was a personal concept, and not subject to law or interference. Genghis Khan was a Tengrist, but was religiously tolerant, and interested in learning philosophical and moral lessons from other religions. He consulted Buddhist monks, including the Zen monk Keyun, Muslims, Christian missionaries, and the Taoist monk Shushuji. Sometime before the rise of Genghis Khan, Ong Khan, his mentor, and eventual rival, had converted to Nestorian Christianity. Various Mongol tribes were shamanist, Buddhist or Christian. Religious tolerance was thus a well-established concept on the Asian steppe. Modern Mongolian historians say that towards the end of his life, Genghis Khan attempted to create a civil state under the Great Yasa that would have established the legal equality of all individuals, including women. However, there is no evidence of this, or of the lifting of discriminatory policies towards sedentary peoples such as the Chinese. Women played a relatively important role in the Mongol Empire, and in the family. For example, Temüjin Khatun was briefly in charge of the Mongol Empire while the next male leader Kievan was being chosen. Modern scholars refer to the alleged policy of encouraging trade and communication as the Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace. Genghis Khan realized that he needed people who could govern cities and states conquered by him. He also realized that such administrators could not be found among his Mongol people because they were nomads, and thus had no experience governing cities. For this purpose Genghis Khan invited a Khitan prince, Hutsai, who worked for the Jin, and had been captured by the Mongol army after the Jin dynasty was defeated. Jin had risen to power by displacing the Khitan people. Genghis told Hutsai, who was a lineal descendant of Khitan rulers, that he had avenged Hutsai's forefathers. Hutsai responded that his father served the Jin dynasty honestly, and so did he. Also, he did not consider his own father his enemy, so the question of revenge did not apply. This reply impressed Genghis Khan. Hutsai administered parts of the Mongol Empire, and became a confidant of the successive Mongol Khans. Genghis Khan put absolute trust in his generals, such as Mukhali, Jebei, and Subutai, and regarded them as close advisors, often extending them the same privileges and trust normally reserved for close family members. He allowed them to make decisions on their own when they embarked on campaigns far from the Mongol Empire capital Karakorum. Mukhali, a trusted lieutenant, was given command of the Mongol forces against the Jin dynasty while Genghis Khan was fighting in Central Asia, and Subutai and Jebei were allowed to pursue the Great Raid into the Caucasus and Kievan Rus, an idea they had presented to the Khagan on their own initiative. While granting his generals a great deal of autonomy in making command decisions, Genghis Khan also expected unwavering loyalty from them. The Mongol military was also successful in siege warfare, cutting off resources for cities and towns by diverting certain rivers, taking enemy prisoners, and driving them in front of the army, and adopting new ideas, techniques, and tools from the people they conquered, particularly in employing Muslim and Chinese siege engines and engineers to aid the Mongol cavalry in capturing cities. Another standard tactic of the Mongol military was the commonly practiced feigned retreat to break enemy formations, and to lure small enemy groups away from the larger group, and defended position for ambush and counterattack. Another important aspect of the military organization of Genghis Khan was the communications and supply route or YAM, adapted from previous Chinese models. Genghis Khan dedicated special attention to this in order to speed up the gathering of military intelligence and official communications. To this end, YAM way stations were established all over the empire. Genghis Khan is credited with bringing the Silk Road under one cohesive political environment. This allowed increased communication and trade between the West, Middle East, and Asia, thus expanding the horizons of all three cultural areas. Some historians have noted that Genghis Khan instituted certain levels of meritocracy in his rule, was tolerant of religions, and explained his policies clearly to all his soldiers. Genghis Khan had a notably positive reputation among some Western European authors in the Middle Ages, who knew little concrete information about his empire in Asia. The Italian explorer Marco Polo said that Genghis Khan was a man of great worth, and of great ability and valor, while a philosopher and inventor Roger Bacon applauded the scientific and philosophical vigor of Genghis Khan's empire, and the famed writer Geoffrey Chaucer wrote concerning Kambinskan. The noble king was called Genghis Khan, who in his time was of so great renown that there was nowhere and no region so excellent a lord in all things. In Mongolia, Genghis Khan has meanwhile been revered for centuries by Mongols and many Turkic peoples because of his association with tribal statehood, political and military organization, and victories in war. As the principal unifying figure in Mongolian history, he remains a larger-than-life figure in Mongolian culture. He is credited with introducing the Mongolian script and creating the first written Mongolian code of law, in the form of the Yasa. During the communist period in Mongolia, Genghis was often described by the government as a reactionary figure, and positive statements about him were avoided. In 1962, the erection of a monument at his birthplace, and a conference held in commemoration of his 800th birthday led to criticism from the Soviet Union, and the dismissal of Secretary Tomorokar of the ruling Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party Central Committee. In the early 1990s, the memory of Genghis Khan underwent a powerful revival, partly in reaction to its suppression during the Mongolian People's Republic period. Genghis Khan became a symbol of national identity for many younger Mongolians, who maintain that the historical records written by non-Mongolians are unfairly biased against Genghis Khan, and that his butchery is exaggerated, while his positive role is underrated. There are conflicting views of Genghis Khan in China, which suffered a drastic decline in population. The population of North China decreased from 50 million in the 1195 census to 8.5 million in the Mongol census of 1235-36, however, many were victims of plague. In Hebei province alone, 9 out of 10 were killed by the Black Death when Dogen Temür was enthroned in 1333. Dubious, discuss better source needed. Northern China was also struck by floods and famine long after the war in northern China was over in 1234. And not killed by Mongols. The Black Death also contributed. By 1351, 2 out of 3 people in China had died of the plague, helping to spur armed rebellion, most notably in the form of the Red Turban rebellions. However, according to Richard von Glahn, a historian of Chinese economics, China's population only fell by 15% to 33% from 1340 to 1370. And there is a conspicuous lack of evidence for pandemic disease on the scale of the Black Death in China at this time. An unknown number of people also migrated to southern China in this period, including under the preceding Southern Song dynasty. The Mongols also spared many cities from massacre and sacking if they surrendered, including Kaifeng, Yangzhou, and Hangzhou. Ethnic Han and Khitan soldiers defected en masse to Genghis Khan against the Jurchen-led Jin dynasty. Equally, while Genghis never conquered all of China, his grandson Kublai Khan, by completing that conquest, and establishing the Yuan dynasty, is often credited with reuniting China, and there is a great deal of Chinese artwork, and literature praising Genghis as a military leader and political genius. The Yuan dynasty left an indelible imprint on Chinese political and social structures, and a cultural legacy that outshone the preceding Jin dynasty. The conquests and leadership of Genghis Khan included widespread devastation and mass murder. The targets of campaigns that refused to surrender would often be subject to reprisals in the form of enslavement and wholesale slaughter. The second campaign against Western Xia, the final military action led by Genghis Khan, and during which he died, involved an intentional and systematic destruction of Western Xia cities and culture. According to John Mann, because of this policy of total obliteration, Western Xia is little known to anyone other than experts in the field because so little record is left of that society. He states that there is a case to be made that this was the first ever recorded example of attempted genocide. It was certainly very successful ethnocide. In the conquest of Khwarezmia under Genghis Khan, the Mongols razed the cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, Herat, Tuz, and Naishabur, and killed the respective urban populations. His invasions are considered the beginning of a 200-year period known in Iran and other Islamic societies as the Mongol catastrophe. Ibn al-Athir, Adam al-Juvaini, Siraj al-Din Jozjani, and Rashid al-Din Fazil al-Hamadani, Iranian historians from the time of Mongol occupation, describe the Mongol invasions as a catastrophe never before seen. A number of present-day Iranian historians, including Zabi al-Asafa, have likewise viewed the period initiated by Genghis Khan as a uniquely catastrophic era. Stephen R. Ward writes that the Mongol violence and depredations in the Iranian plateau killed up to 3/4 of the population. Possibly 10 to 15 million people. Some historians have estimated that Iran's population did not again reach its pre-Mongol levels until the mid-20th century. Although the famous Mughal emperors were proud descendants of Genghis Khan, and particularly Timur, they clearly distanced themselves from the Mongol atrocities committed against the Khwarezm Shahs, Turks, Persians, the citizens of Baghdad and Damascus, Nishapur, Bukhara, and historical figures such as Attar of Nishapur, and many other notable Muslims. However, Mughal emperors directly patronized the legacies of Genghis Khan and Timur. Together their names were synonymous with the names of other distinguished personalities, particularly among the Muslim populations of South Asia. Unlike most emperors, Genghis Khan never allowed his image to be portrayed in paintings or sculptures. The earliest known images of Genghis Khan were produced half a century after his death, including the famous National Palace Museum portrait in Taiwan. The portrait portrays Genghis Khan wearing white robes, a leather warming cap, and his hair tied in braids, much like a similar depiction of Kublai Khan. This portrait is often considered to represent the closest resemblance to what Genghis Khan actually looked like, though it, like all others' renderings, suffers from the same limitation of being, at best, a facial composite. Like many of the earliest images of Genghis Khan, the Chinese-style portrait presents the Great Khan in a manner more akin to a Mandarin sage than a Mongol warrior. Other portrayals of Genghis Khan from other cultures likewise characterized him according to their particular image of him. In Persia he was portrayed as a Turkic sultan, and in Europe he was pictured as an ugly barbarian with a fierce face and cruel eyes. According to sinologist Herbert Allen Giles, a Mongol painter known as Holy Hassan, also known as Khwarezm or Kurukashun, was commissioned by Kublai Khan in 1278 to paint the National Palace Museum portrait. The story goes that Kublai Khan ordered Khwarezm, along with the other entrusted remaining followers of Genghis Khan, to ensure the portrait reflected the Great Khan's true image. The only individuals to have recorded Genghis Khan's physical appearance during his lifetime were the Persian chronicler Minhaj al-Siraj Juzjani, and Chinese diplomat Zhao Hong. Minhaj al-Siraj described Genghis Khan as a man of tall stature, of vigorous build, robust in body, the hair of his face scanty, and turned white, with cat's eyes, possessed of dedicated energy, discernment, genius, and understanding, awe-striking. The chronicler had also previously commented on Genghis Khan's height, powerful build, with cat's eyes, and lack of gray hair, based on the evidence of eyewitnesses in 1220, which saw Genghis Khan fighting in the Khorasan, modern-day northwest Persia. According to Paul Rachnevsky, the Song dynasty envoy Zhao Hong, who visited the Mongols in 1221, described Genghis Khan as of tall and majestic stature, his brow is broad, and his beard is long. Other descriptions of Genghis Khan come from 14th century texts. The Persian historian Rashid al-Din and Jami al-Tawarik, written in the beginning of the 14th century, stated that most Burjigin ancestors of Genghis Khan were tall, long-bearded, red-haired, and bluish-green-eyed, features which Genghis Khan himself had. The factual nature of this statement is considered controversial. In the Georgian chronicles, in a passage written in the 14th century, Genghis Khan is similarly described as a large, good-looking man, with red hair. However, according to John Andrew Boyle, Rashid al-Din's text of red hair referred to ruddy skin complexion, and that Genghis Khan was of ruddy complexion like most of his children except for Kublai Khan, who was swarthy. He translated the text as it chanced that he was born 2 months before Mughal, and when Genghis Khan's eye fell upon him he said, "All our children are of a ruddy complexion, but this child is swarthy like his maternal uncles. Tell Sorkaktani Beki to give him to a good nurse to be reared." 14th century Arabic historian Shihab al-Umari also disputed Rashid al-Din's translation, and claimed al-Angwa falsified the origin of her clan. Some historians such as Denis Egla claim that Rashid al-Din mythicized the origin of Genghis Khan ancestors, the Burjigin clan, through his own interpretations of the secret history of the Mongols. Italian historian Igor de Rechulitz claimed that the Mongol origins of the early ancestors of Genghis Khan were animals born from the blue-eye wolf, Borchino, and the fallow doe, Koi Maral, that was described in the early legends, that their ancestors were animals. In Mongolia today, Genghis Khan's name and likeness appear on products, streets, buildings, and other places. His face can be found on everyday commodities, from liquor bottles to candy, and on the largest denominations of 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, and 20,000 Mongolian Tagrog. Mongolia's main international airport in Ulaanbaatar is named Genghis Khan International Airport, and there is a 40 meters high equestrian statue of Genghis Khan east of the Mongolian capital. There has been talk about regulating the use of his name and image to avoid trivialization. Genghis Khan's birthday, on the first day of winter, according to the Mongolian lunar calendar, is a national holiday. Outside of Mongolia, there have been numerous works of literature, films, and other adaptation works based on the Mongolian ruler and his legacy. The Squire's Tale, one of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, is set at the court of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan by Vasily Yan, 1939. The first installment of an epic trilogy about the Mongol conquests, and winner of a USSR State Prize in 1942. The End of Genghis, a poem by F. L. Lucas, in which the dying Khan, attended by his Khitan counselor Yalu Chutsai, looks back on his life. The Conqueror series of novels by Khan Gulden. Steppe by Piers Anthony. White Cloud of Genghis Khan by Chingiz Aitmatov. The Private Life of Genghis Khan by Douglas Adams, and Graham Chapman. Genghis Khan, a 1950 Philippine film directed by Manuel Conde. The Conqueror, released in 1956, and starring John Wayne as Temüjin, and Susan Hayward as Bort. Genghis Khan, a 1957 Indian Hindi language film directed by Kedar Kapoor, starring Sheikh Mukhtar as the Emperor along with Beena Rai, and Prem Nath in the lead roles. Genghis Khan, a 1965 film starring Omar Sharif. Under the Eternal Blue Sky, a Mongolian film directed by Balyaniam, which was released in 1990. Starring Agvan Serenjin and Kievan as Temüjin. Genghis Khan, an unfinished 1992 film starring Richard Tyson, Charlton Heston, and Pat Morita. Genghis Khan, a Proud Son of Heaven, a 1998 film made in Mongolian, with English subtitles. Genghis Khan, To the Ends of the Earth and Sea, also known as The Descendant of Grey Wolf, a Japanese-Mongolian film released in 2007. Mongol, a 2007 film directed by Sergei Bodrov, starring Tadanobu Asano. Academy Award nominee for Best Foreign Language Film. No Right to Die, Genghis Khan, a Mongolian film released in 2008. Genghis Khan, a Chinese film released in 2018. Genghis Khan, a 1987 Hong Kong television series produced by TVB, starring Alex Mann. Genghis Khan, a 1987 Hong Kong television series produced by ATV, starring Tony Liu. Genghis Khan, a 2004 Chinese-Mongolian co-produced television series, starring Buddhadarjin Basanyab, who is a descendant of Genghis Khan's second son Shagatai. Akhri Hadan, a 1978 Pakistani drama series having Zahor Ahmed as Genghis Khan. West German pop band Genghis Khan took its name from the German language spelling of Genghis Khan. They participated in the Eurovision Song Contest 1979 with their song of the same name. Heavy metal band Iron Maiden released an all-instrumental track titled Genghis Khan on their 1981 sophomore album Killers. The band Mike Snow released the song Genghis Khan in 2017. Mongolian folk rock band The Who released a song called The Great Genghis Khan in August 2019. Temüjin, video game, a 1997 computer game. Aoki Okami to Shiroki Meihika, Genghis Khan themed Japanese game series.